Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Insider podcast number 98. In this period of time, we have a little bit of it's hard to get guests in the right period of time. So today I've decided to do a different podcast, a different format. And I wanted to share with you my story because if you're a new listener, maybe you don't know my background, maybe you don't know my story. And I never wanted the podcast to be about me. So now that it's the episode 98, I can share more about myself and what is my background. And it's not about me, but it's about my path. And maybe this will be useful to you and can be helpful to follow similar path and find your own way to become a professional architect as I became. I'm not licensed yet, so I cannot call myself architect. I'll be licensed soon, hopefully. But yeah, I'm working in an architecture office as a project architect or design assistant, as in some countries is called. So I wanted to share my story since the beginning so that you guys can know more about me. And if it's something that you can relate to, you will be able to get some lessons that I have to learn the hard way. And this is all about this podcast, to interview people and understand what were the lessons they had to learn the hard way, and in order to help you to avoid the same mistakes. So let's start from the beginning. So the beginnings are in 1992. I was born in Sofia, Bulgaria, in the middle of the savage years in Eastern Europe where the communist bloc was collapsing and there was mayhem and chaos. But my parents were just coming back from Italy where they spent 2 years with me. In I was still in the belly of my mom, and I was born in August 1992 in Bulgaria, where I lived until the 2000, until I was almost 8 when we left. We left in July after I have finished the first class of the elementary school, and my dad moved to Italy already 2 years earlier, I think in '98, and because in the 90s in the socialist countries there was very big economical fluctuation, economical mayhem, and my dad had started a business that didn't go well. It was in the field of furniture, so he has seen the best option to go back to Italy. And in 2000 was the first time when I was 8 that I moved to Italy and started studying there. So my dad was first working as a he was working in a warehouse for building materials, which is irony because I've been somehow involved into the field. And afterwards, he became a truck driver in Italy in the early 2000s. So that's the background of from my dad's side. And my mom, she was always working in the field of, she's an engineer, and she was working in the field of economics in Bulgaria, in some of the organs that control the stock market in Bulgaria. And when we moved to Italy, she had a very long holiday that she never had used, so she was in holiday for a long time. And then my brother came, and then after a while, she moved back to Bulgaria. So, but she has been working through that field, so that you understand also the background of my family. And so there are no architects, no real creatives in our family. But I can say that from the side of my dad, there is a lot of talent into drawing. My dad himself, I think, is quite good at drawing, natural talent. And I have a first cousin from my dad's side who also became an architect, but he was not an architect long before me. He's like 5 or 6 years older, and we graduated more or less the same time because he needed a little longer time to finish university due to several factors. So basically, no background in architecture. I've been always a good student at school, like never focus on having straight A's in everything. I was always good and very ambitious, but I was focusing on learning what I think it was interesting for me and what it would be useful, and to understand principles, and very curious. And I've been passionate about drawing myself. I really enjoyed when I could sit there for hours and draw stuff and see how they turn on to the paper and then becoming better and better and better. And Italy, it's not the best place to immigrate if you want to follow like some sort of meritocracy. This is probably not nice to say, but it's the reality. It's a very beautiful place to live. It's a very beautiful place to go on holiday, but it's not the best place to work and follow your personal goals and further develop yourself in the career field, maybe in some exclusive fields of, but you have to be very established already, or you have to be ready to struggle. And so the idea is I was studying there 5 years. I studied 4 years elementary school because I started by the second grade in Italy. And then in Italy, we have 3 years of something called mid school. And after mid school, you had to decide if you want to go to high school and which high school you want to go to. And there you have some sort of people that help you understand what might be fitting to you. But in my case, they said it's good to go to some more challenging school because you're good in school. And the main options were like there is a mathematical school or a classic school where you study Latin or Greek. And we were living, by the way, in Nettuno. It's a very small town, 60 kilometers southern than Rome. So you can check it on Google where it is. And back in the days, we were thinking, what can I become? I was thinking lawyer. I was thinking something else. And then came up the idea of architect. Why architect? Because architect is something that you have like this ability that it's very visible and very concrete. So you're building stuff and it's not based, the skills you have and the skills and the goals you have to achieve at work cannot be really based on connections because it's not like political or paperwork. It's very much like design and hard skills, and everything that you design, it goes on a construction place. So we were thinking in an environment like Italy where everything is very connection based. The best thing for me was to become an architect and to study architecture. And the best school that would have prepared me for that was the High School of Arts. But in Nettuno, there was no High School of Arts. So I had to move to study in Rome. And of course, by moving, I didn't mean like living there alone because I was 14 or 15 when I started doing that. But it was meaning that I had to travel with a train every day back and forth. And that was very, very hard in the beginning because I had to wake up at 5:20 and at 6:10 or 6:15 the train was leaving to Rome. The train then arrived in Rome at 7:15, 7:30, and by 8:15 I was at school. So in the beginning it was really hard, and it was really hard to connect with my classmates because you can imagine that after school I just wanted to go home because we finished school at 2 in the afternoon, and then by the time I got the train and came back home it was 5:30. So I had a really long day. But the positive part of the whole thing is that I could study in the train 1.5 hours on the way there and 1.5 hours way back, which was very helpful and easy for me to do and to learn my stuff for school. So how was this School of Arts? This High School of Arts in Rome was really interesting because the first 2 years were the same program for everybody. You just join, and the first 2 years you study everything. So we studied a lot of history of art. We had a lot of class connection to paintings. We had sculpting with like stone and pottery. Like we even fired one of the sculptures we did out of stone. So it was really interesting. In the first 2 years, and the difference between this school and a regular high school is that you have a lot of hours, and we studied also on Saturday, sorry. So you have, like, as I said, you start at 8 and you finish like at 2 something. And every week you have a lot of hours where you just draw and do geometrical drawing, and then you study all the regular class like literature, history, geography, mathematics, and then you have all the extra hours for all the art art classes. And after the second year, you could have chosen some direction. There were three directions back in the days. Now I think there are way more. There is also a lot of graphic design, but back in the days was interior and architecture, which was my case. There was just painting, and there was the classical path. It was something called classical, where you kept doing a little bit of everything, and you could finish 1 year earlier if you were joining the Academy of Arts. So it was something that then disappeared. I think I was the last student to have the chance to do what's called traditional studies. So you kept doing a little bit of everything, and you could decide to finish in the fourth year if you were going to the Academy of Arts, and if you wanted to have the opportunity to go to university, you had to stay 1 extra year and finish regular school like every one of us. So when I picked architecture and interior design, we started learning already at school a lot of AutoCAD, Rhino. We did models. We built models at school. We did little projects with our teachers who were architects. But yeah, nothing comparable to the university, but it was really, really useful to learn the CAD software and to learn Rhino 3D modeling. That was very, very useful. A lot of history of arts was really nice, and not only arts, of course. The teacher taught us a little bit of history of architecture too. I have to say I was really lucky. We had very good teachers. The only, so to say, subject that was not so good compared to the rest of the schools was mathematics, because of course you cannot do all the CAD stuff and all the hours and then have a good education in every single subject. And I have to say that the students that were going to this kind of high school were more artistically oriented, so they weren't so good at mathematics. So the teachers had to keep also the study program quite at the low end in order to make possible for everybody to pass. So yeah, I've been quite a good student there. Had pretty good grades, and in the end we had the final exam, which in Italy consists in first day you have literature where you have to write an essay about a topic. That went pretty well. Then you have the second day you have to do the second test in our school was based on the subject of what you were studying. So in our case was to make an architectural project, and I had to design, and we had 3 days to design fully. I think it was a restaurant. We had like a program about how to design the restaurant, and we sat there. We had a very nice labs with all these Macintosh computers, and we had to draw this restaurant in 2-3 days. We designed the restaurant with plans, floor plans, sections, elevations, and so on. And then we had the third test was general on all the subjects with questions, and then we had to write down a little thesis that connected different subjects of our studies. And then I finished, and I managed to get my grade in the end was 97 out of 100 points. That was my grade by graduating high school. And already there, I was in the final year. I was thinking, well, I'm going to study architecture. Where I'm going to study architecture? How does it work to get accepted at the university in Rome? And it was very easy for us because we had these teachers which were architects, and they could give us good advice and direction. And they suggested to the kids that wanted to go to study architecture to join the 5 years program at the University La Sapienza. That was the best. They explained to us that if you do the 5 years, you don't have a bachelor degree in between. So you have the disadvantage that you cannot change universities for your master's, but you have a better education. And so back in the days, I thought, well, my family is not going to have the opportunity to send me to study somewhere else, really. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to get the best education possible. And in order to access university in Italy, you have to go to a test which has several questions. I don't remember how many questions there were. It's just you have to cross the right answer. And the rule was the following: you need every right answer you cross, it's 3 points. Every answer you don't cross, it's nothing. And every answer that you cross wrongly, it's -1 point. So I think the system, it's in order so that you cannot go and just try to cross whatever it comes and then you get in. So you have to really think what you know and what you can cross in order to get the points. So I went there, and you could buy some books and prepare for the tests, and try to access university by preparing for the tests. And this is what I spent my summer after graduating high school. I spent my summer by doing these tests. They look a little bit like the test for driving license if you have a driving license. So I remember the statistics. The statistic were that there were 300 something spots for that specific faculty, and there were around 5,000 candidates. So you sign up for the test, you get the room where you need to go, and then you have to finish the test, and then after a few days you receive a message on your online platform if you have gotten in or not. And I did that with my best friend from university. He didn't prepare that much, so if, let's say, there were 300 spots and we didn't have any alternative, so I didn't have any alternative really what to do if I don't get into the Faculty of Architecture. Maybe my plan was to go to London and work in London for a year because there was one of my friends there, and then maybe try again the next year. And so we went, and as you can see now, we managed to get in. My friend who didn't prepare was, I think, in the top 50 of the 300 spots, and I was really much around in the between 150, something like that. But if you're a little bit after the last possible spot, you can consider yourself also in, because some of the people who are getting in the first 300 spots, maybe they just were candidates because they wanted to try out, and they will drop their spot. So the next people will take the spots that are not accepted by the people who would have the right to get into the university. And so I started university, and university, it's always a little bit of a shock because it's so much different than school. I mean, if you're already through that, you know that it's so much harder than school, and you have to figure out a lot of the things your own way. But I was pretty much well set up for all the subjects that were architecture related. Like, I could use AutoCAD, I could use Rhino, and that was a big plus. Although most of the things, and I could draw well also by hand. So I remember the first year in Rome, you have to draw almost everything by hand, and you have a little bit of CAD that they teach you, so in order to be ready for the second year. But what was really, really hard were all the scientific subjects, like we have a lot of statics, a lot of mathematics, and that was really hard. So for those exams where the goal was really to just pass the exam, and then that's it. If you get enough to pass, like in Rome, it was like the best grade it's 30, and the minimum grade you have to pass an exam, it's 18. So I remember mathematics 1, I got 18, and for me it was like, okay, that's good enough. I don't have to do anything else. And I passed all that exams, figure out all that stuff. And the first year was really intense, but I managed to pass all the exams. The second year too was quite well. I didn't pass all the exams. You can take them later in Rome. There are certain subjects that you have to pass the next one in order to be able to pass further exams in the later year. But yeah, they like sort of, let's say you have History of Architecture 1, 2, and 3, and you can give like you can take the exam number 3 only if you have passed already 1 and 2. So this is basically, and there are several subjects like that. So, and in this faculty of 5 years, I remember we had several professors that were very inspiring, and I became very passionate about sustainable architecture. And we had this professor who was really good, and he had taught already in Munich in Germany. And he told us that if we wanted to be really good in that field, we should go to the University of Munich. And there were a great opportunity with the Erasmus program. And another professor that was also very useful, like very inspiring, not useful, she said, well, guys, if you want to be successful after you finish university, you should have taken part in competitions by the time you have finished university, and also have done an Erasmus experience for your CV. So I knew I wasn't coming from a very wealthy family, and going in Erasmus can be quite expensive. So for the people who don't know, Erasmus is like an exchange program within the European Union or other participating countries like Great Britain or the Switzerland, and where you get money from the European Union. I don't know, depends on the country you're coming from, but each month it's around 200 to 300, 400 bucks maximum, with which you can pay basically a room somewhere in another city. And you can go and take your exams in another university that it's partnering with your home university. So that was the case with Munich. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try. And I talked to my parents and said, look, this is important. Can we prepare economically for that so that I can go there for, I don't know, 1 year and make this experience? It would be very important, because I didn't see any positive exit if I just went with the regular path at the university in Rome. And so I applied, but the problem is that in order to apply and get the spot at the most requested destinations, as it was Munich, you had to have a very good average grade in your records. And that was not the case for me compared to other students, because I was doing really, really well at architectural subjects, but I was doing really, really bad or average at subjects like mathematics or physics and stuff like that, because I didn't have the background in mathematics to do well. And for me, it was important to finish on time rather than taking longer time and not having and having the best grade. So I applied for Munich and I didn't get it, and I didn't know what to do next. So I sent several emails to other universities in Germany, and the only university that were happy with me not speaking any German, although their classes were in German, was the University of Applied Sciences in Frankfurt. They said, well, you should speak German, but nobody does, and the teachers are quite open for it. So, and also another big point for me was that there were direct flights from Rome to Frankfurt, so I could go and directly fly back and forth in that year. And and this is how I decided to apply. I went there. Thought it was funny because the professor that was responsible was a professor I knew, was my professor of urbanistics. And I said, yeah, we have this very tight deadline. We have to send the documents, but I want to spend a year in Frankfurt. Let's do this. And within very few weeks, I managed to get my paperwork done, and then I was accepted. That was around March or April, I don't remember. And I was leaving in September for Frankfurt. So I finished my exams, went back to Bulgaria, then came back to Italy for a week, and then left for Germany right afterwards. And here was incredible. The first month when I arrived, you are just diving into this Erasmus community, and there were also students from other exchange programs with the States, with Korea, with Mexico. So I got to meet people from everywhere around the world, and also people from Europe, from countries that I have never met people before from, like they were from Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, Spain, as I said, from the States, from Korea. So on the first month, we had this German intensive class, which was not so successful because every single occasion in free time we just have spoken in English, and you just go to this class during the day, and then you party hard for a month. And after a month, I was like, okay, I cannot sustain this lifestyle anymore, and now my classes are starting, so I can focus back on architecture. And then we started the architecture classes, and the university was way different than back home. In Rome was very theoretical, and you had to learn a lot of theory, and in Frankfurt was more like it's applied sciences, so it was very practical. And the classes were very small, and we had a lot of good infrastructure, like for model making. We had a room where we could work 24 hours with a magnetic card, and the Erasmus students had some reserved spots. So it was awesome. And we started studying. I also had some fellow students from back home from Rome who were also with me, and we became this sort of family in this first year. And we were spending all of our time studying and taking the best out of our opportunity. And we got to know a little bit of the local students, and they were all working, because in Germany there is this law for working students. So while you are enrolled in a university, you can get hired, and the company that hires you, they are very happy to hire because they pay less taxes. So they were already sort of interning, if you want to say that, into architecture office, and that create a sort of I felt a little worried because I said I don't know even how it looks like an architectural office, and these guys are still in university already working. They must be very smart, because back in Italy it was even impossible to think you can get a job in an architectural office. And this is when I was like, okay, this is gonna be a disaster because they must be super, super good. And then we started the classes, and these guys were not much better than we are. Actually, they were really worse at their designs. They were not so good as ours, and their ideas were not so good as ours. So I thought, like, I don't think they're better. I think they just speak German. So I had to learn German, and then I was like, God damn, why didn't I follow better the classes of intensive German class instead of partying and drinking and speaking English with my American friends? So I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go back on this German thing and start learning. And I basically, in this working room where I had my spot, I would paste a lot of post-its, because if in front of my desk there was the back of we had lockers where we could put our stuff, and the lockers were creating sort of barriers, and this on the back of the lockers there were the desks. So in front of this back of the locker I would paste these post-its and learn verbs, learn grammar structures, and try to train with my German friends that I in the meanwhile got to know. And of course there were a lot of embarrassing moments, but slow. And I was going to this German class during the semester once a week, where they would explain to us only like grammar. And and I spent there the first semester, completed all the exams, and learn a little bit of German, very basic. And I was starting to ask where I can apply. So I applied for these 3 different offices that I got to know people which were already working there. And the first job interview, I prepared a portfolio with a friend, a German friend who she helped me a lot. Prepared a CV and then applied for this one job. Then another friend of mine told me, "Oh, there is a job opening in our office. You can apply too." And sent my application. And the first job interview was really bad. They said I'm not comfortable to do it in German, so I did it in English. The guy was like, you know that if you have to come at least 20 hours a week, otherwise you're not part of the team. We cannot give you any other job than doing coffee and stuff. I was like, okay, this is really sucks. It's really went really bad. Let's see how the next one is gonna go. And the next interview I went after a full week. I hadn't slept because we had to hand in the last presentation of the semester. So I went back home after the presentation after 4 days during which I hadn't slept. Um, put on the last really clean clothes I had on, so nothing fancy. I went to the interview and they asked me if I want something to drink. I said, just give me a coffee. And because I had listened to all the presentations of the projects during the day in German, they asked me like, okay, let's do the interview in German. Like you can speak in German. And when you don't understand something or when you don't know something, you can switch to English. So we see how long have you been in Germany? What is your level of German and stuff like that. And yeah, and I was like, okay, let's go for it. And somehow I explained all my projects in German. And they were like, how long are you in Germany? I said, like 5 months, 4 months. And they were like, if you know that much German in 4 months, you're good to go. So I think you're very fitting. You can come in here. You can work here. We'll call you back in the next days to let you know how much it would be your salary per hour and stuff like that. And then the next day I had another interview. I did the other interview, which they offered me like a full-time internship, which I wasn't fine with because, of course, I was an Erasmus student, so I had to follow classes. Anyways, that company called me back and they said, we're going to pay you 11 euros the hour. Back in the days, that was 2016, the minimum wage in Germany was 8.50, I think, the hour. So they were paying me 11 euros, and that was like crazy stuff for me. And yeah, and like when they got me the contract in my hands, I was like, that's crazy stuff, and started working. And in Germany, you have semester breaks, which are like a month where you don't go, month or 2 months where you don't go to university before you start the second semester. And during the time as a working student, you're allowed then to work full time. Otherwise, you're allowed to work only 20 hours per week. And I made a lot of money because you can imagine 40 hours per week per 11 euros per 4 weeks was quite good money. And I said also to my dad that he doesn't need to send me more money over because I'm working now, which was a little bit unbelievable for him. And when I started working and everything was going well, I was thinking going back to Italy, it's really, really stupid right now because I'm building up this career already and I was 23, so I was like 23, 24. I was like, okay, 23, 24 people in Italy are not even close to this point. I knew people that were graduated with posts, with PhDs in architecture and were making that kind of money. So I was like, okay, I have to figure out a way to stay. And I was considering to doing a transfer. And in that moment, the idea of doing the 5 years master felt so stupid because you never know what will be the reason for switching cities or universities. So never go with something particular like this 5 years master I decided to do. Just go with the standard bachelor and then the masters. And that was the case. And I was like, transferring here will be very complicated. So my mom told me something like, you have the opportunity to do 2 years of Erasmus because you have basically 1 year doing your bachelor and 1 year doing your master. But as I didn't have this subdivision, I could apply for another year. And she said, like, why don't you try to apply for another year and then you finish all your exams and then you can somehow graduate at the University of Rome. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, but it's going to be very hard. They give me another year of scholarship. Because then the second year when you apply, you have lower chances. But it worked. I got a place for the second year in Frankfurt. So I stayed as a student in Frankfurt, kept working, finished my exams in Frankfurt. And in the meanwhile at work, I was doing like competitions in feasibility studios. And by the middle of the second year already Erasmus, they told me, do you want to move to a real project and do real work? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's learn. And I completed the second year of Erasmus. And before completing the year of Erasmus, I told my bosses, like, look, guys, I'm finishing with Erasmus, so I cannot be a working student anymore in Germany because I cannot be enrolled in a university. How about you give me a job part-time and I can figure out a way to do my thesis from here. And if you want to keep me, if you don't want to keep me, I'm going back to Rome. And they said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And I connected with a professor back in Rome. I said, look, this is the situation. I'm in Germany. I'm already working. I'm really happy here. I don't want to go back to Italy. I just need to finish my master thesis. Can we figure out a way to do it from distance? And I was thinking, yeah, it's going to be fine. I'm used to busting my ass because while studying and working, I didn't do anything else but architecture. So I never went to party, almost never. From the moment I started working, I went to party maybe once every 2 months or something like that. And I really lost connection to the Erasmus community because they were partying and they were focused on partying. And I was focused on building a career because I was coming from a family that didn't have any connections to this world. And my dad was a truck driver and knew that my opportunities back in Italy were really bad. And I was like really, really hungry to get the chance I got. And all the other students also were very impressed that I found this job, and they were like surprised that I back it up when I said I'm gonna find a job in architecture. So yeah, that was. I mean, you have to work hard to use your opportunities. And but when I started doing the thesis and working, I was working 3 days a week full time, and 2 days I was supposed to do the thesis, and then or 4 days because the weekends too. But anyways, it didn't go so smooth. I was very struggling because the work was very intense and so on. And I wasn't so productive. So it took me a very long time. It took me like 2 years, 4 semesters just to do the master thesis. And then in the end, the relationship with my teacher was really going back and forth because she was very unhappy with the whole situation. But in the end of the day, I pushed through. The whole topic of the thesis was really complex, but it was basically an urban development which was based on an idea of Jan Gehl. It was the urban development that they actually currently building in Frankfurt. So I decided to make an alternative project which was based on a more livable city and sustainable city based on the studies like from Jan Gehl and what I had learned at the university and so on. And also what I had learned at work. It was a project that was going from the urban development level to the really different buildings and the different apartments and the different offices and so on. If you want, I'll put a link in the description of this podcast so that you can go check out the work and you can get yourself an idea about my thesis. But the thesis was oriented for future applications because my boss was saying that when they were interviewing people coming out of university, they would look at their thesis, and that was really important. So for me, it was really important to make a thesis that was very presentable for the professional world. So if this was my tactic, and still nowadays it works quite well. So this is what I did, and it took me longer than I thought, but in the end of the day, it worked, and I managed to. Luckily, I managed to graduate right before the pandemics, and right after that, I had already a job already. I was basically after the first year, I worked for 3 days a week. Then I worked for full time after a year because I needed more money. And it was so hard to do the thesis also because it was nothing that was being built, right? So I didn't give the same importance to the thesis as I did to the project I was doing at work. Because at work we were designing something that was being built, and it was like I was thinking, this is so crazy. I cannot graduate, but I'm already working on a building that's being built. And there was also some difficulty for me, but 2019 October, it's when finally I managed to graduate. I got the grade of 107 of 110, my overall score in the end. And the critique of the professors were that my project was way too realistic and was not academical enough. And for me, that was a compliment, because that was exactly the the idea that I wanted to do. And after I finished that, I had been working at the same office for 4 years. So I was thinking, okay, I've been at this office 4 years. Many people have gone, many people have come. Um, it's a little bit like when you're finishing something and you feel like you have consumed everything you could learn at this place. The project I was working on was about to be completed. Um, and so I was like, okay, this is great. Let's try to move to another office. And also, I didn't feel like there will be big time economical advantage or let's say raise at the office I was working at. And I had make some experience, so I applied for several jobs with my thesis now, and with some of the projects from work. And of course, the response was really, really positive. And I got this other job. I quit, and in the beginning of the year of the pandemic, in the first of January, 1st, January 2nd, because here it's a holiday, that's January 1st. I started at the new office. I worked there for 3 months. It ended up being the wrong place. And I remember when I quit, I was like, I don't know if it's a smart move quitting, because we didn't know what is going to happen with the pandemic. And I quit, and I worked from January to March. And the 1st of April, I started at a new company. And that was the beginning of the first lockdown in Germany in April 2020. And I was like, God damn, I did a very stupid decision, because if they were to lose projects, or if they were to have lack of work, I would have been the first one to just get out of work. And but luckily it didn't went that way. I started this new job at this huge company, and we had a big project, very intensive project, time intensive project, and we worked on this multifunctional building for a very big company that comes from Switzerland and does robotics. And it was crazy. The working environment was even, I don't know, it was not my place for sure. Was not the right place for me. But 2020 was also the year where I thought, okay, I'm like, once you finish university, there is this big moment in, I think, everyone's career. In university, in your school, when you're studying, you're hoping always for what's gonna come next. It's like I say it's gonna be like a mountain road with a lot of corners, and you're excited driving through the mountains and through the corners and to see what comes next. But 2020 was the beginning of 2020 was okay. I had worked, I changed jobs. The job is not so much different. I look like I arrived on in the valley, and I'm on the highway, and it's all straight and monotone and nothing exciting. And also working in architecture, it means you're working on the same project for several months or years. So I was like, this is not cool. This is not so exciting. I have to do something. And I was thinking, I love podcasts. I've been listening to Joe Rogan since the first time Elon Musk was on that podcast. And I was listening to the Matt Devella podcast, which was called The Ground Up Show, where he was interviewing several entrepreneurs. And that podcast was really nice to listen, because he was talking about how several people, I think he managed to do 100 episodes about people that have started their own business. And he stopped that show, and I was like, I missed that show. And yeah, it cannot be Joe Rogan, because I think that's not the right way. But I want to be I want to make a podcast about architecture and creativity, and to help other people, like the many people I knew from Italy that were struggling in finding their own path, in figuring how to get a job and things like that. And I was like, maybe it shouldn't be only about architecture, it should be about design in general, because things are very similar across different industries. And this is how the idea got in my head, and I brainstormed a little bit with Désirée how to do it. And we brainstormed the name because I found out like a little guide online how to, like, it was from this platform, sharing platform Buzzsprout. They have like quite good um, quite good sort of step-by-step process how to set up a podcast, about the format and stuff. And I like to talk to people. I'm very talkative, so I decided, okay, let's talk to several creatives. I'll talk to my friends because they have interesting stories. And I've said that many times on my podcast. I'm used to buy expensive gear to start doing stuff, and then I don't like doing that stuff, and then I've just lost my money. So I decided to do several episodes just with my phone, where I talk alone to see how I like my voice, how I like my podcast and stuff like that. And then I started interviewing people, but it was very hard to get the first people on the show, because when I asked them, I would ask my friends, let's do this podcast. They didn't know what I wanted to do because there were no any interviews, as an example. Like if you go now and listen to all the episodes we've done with several also very important people within different fields of design, you have sort of an idea what you're going to go through. And actually when I invite somebody, they're very excited. And in the beginning it was very difficult. Even my friends didn't want to do it because they didn't want to be the first one. But anyway, several accepted, and we did this escamotage, let's say, that I did an interview, not an interview, the first 6 episodes were about a specific subject I talk about, that I was wanting to share my knowledge and my experience. They're still available, and they will be always available forever, so that you can see how much we have improved everything, like audio, video. There was no video in the beginning. The audio was awful. The editing was awful. Everything was awful. They will never go away. And then we started doing the first interviews. Of course, in the first episode, we managed to have several people like in person in my home. And then most of the other podcasts were online due to the pandemic and due to the fact that people come from everywhere around the globe. So what I wanted to do also was to have an international podcast. Like what I don't like, for example, about the Joe Rogan experience is that he talks always to the same people from the US, with only the US view, or Great Britain or Australia, that are very from this English culture, let's say. And I wanted to talk from people from everywhere around the world to see how they have done it, so that people who are listening around the globe can also relate to something that's more common to their local culture. And this is how it started, and slowly get momentum, and I decided to buy the gear and improve it, and here we are. And it's been a very pleasant journey, and it has helped me a lot during my career currently, because I have a lot of networking with several people. And also it has worked me in my last application, because when they see that you have done something on the side and you're not somebody that just relying on your daily job, you have also side projects, side interests that are related with your job, that is something that's going to help you. And since then, in after a year working for this big company, I realized that was not my place. So in this a year ago, in April again, I quit, and I went to this new job where I'm currently employed at, and it's been a very different place, the right place finally for me. You can check in my LinkedIn account where I've been working. I don't want to make any names, but it's pretty open up, and talking to this several 200 people that they're in very different positions. We have talked to, I don't know, the chief design officer of PepsiCo, Mauro Porcini, to Debbie Millman. But then we have talked to several very, very local creatives that are very small and have this side hustle. Maybe, I don't know, my former colleague, for example, Grese Muslio, she was there. She's doing 3D printed lamps and vases, which is crazy cool. And and maybe we'll have further collaborations in the future. We have joined very good friendships and collaboration with Oliver Thomas, with Mariana Cabugueira, with the parametric architecture page. It's been very interesting with Eric from Luxigon, with Federico Biancullo from the Control Z blog and from the Big Picture Visual. A lot of architects from Denmark, Effect from Turkey, Alper Drimbogas. There were so many people, Arturo Tedeschi. So if you go through every single episode, you don't have to, but if you go through the podcast about NFTs, graphic design, Marco Montemagno was on the podcast, you'll find lessons that will be very valuable and will give you knowledge, direction, hope for your personal development. And I wanted to share my story to show you that I'm not coming from a rich family. I'm coming from a family that's been through the 90s in Bulgaria, post-communist situation, really bad. Where imagine if your country where you're living now, I mean, we're maybe living in this period of time where everything is going to get disrupted and the whole system is going to change. But this is what happened to my family, and we had to emigrate in another country. And then I further emigrated in another country, in Germany, and I still have found a way. And to find a way, you need to work. So you have to have hope, and you have to work, and not sitting around and expecting somebody to come at you. But it means you have to think what you can do. Like, it can be changing country, changing university, changing fields, doing something extra, connecting with people. Yeah, you have to take action in order to create your opportunities. So you can see that my story wasn't easy, but if you look back at it, it was a nice journey, and it's very educational, and the journey is going on, and I'm really looking forward to see what is going to happen next. And I'm gonna keep working, and I'm gonna keep improving, and yeah, I really hope that that this story will be somehow inspirational for you to understand that everyone can manage to do something in their life. It can be more difficult or less difficult depending on your starting point. Like, I'm still very lucky to be part of a country, to have citizenships from Italy and Bulgaria, which are countries of the EU, which are among the best countries around in the world. I can imagine there are other people who are listening from even harder situation than my starting point. But yeah, you don't have to let yourself down, and you have to work, and opportunities will come, and you have to take those opportunities. My grandma has a very nice way of saying, she says, you have to work for your luck. Like, you work and you generate these opportunities in life, and you have to take them, and you have to be like a swimmer, which means you have to swim and not taking care around what is happening around you, what is doing this guy or that guy. You just have to focus on yourself. And for example, for my case, if I were partying all day and all night with my Erasmus friends, I wouldn't have generated this occasion to start interning and to make money and be independent from my parents. And yeah, so when somebody says you cannot change your status quo, that's not true. Like, if I look back at where I started and where I'm now, it's been a long journey, and it's been a lot of hard work. If you think I went to the School of Arts, waking up every day at 5:30, back in the day it was hell. But now when I look back, it's not so bad. Like, it was good for me, and it created discipline in me, and then it helped me later on. And if I didn't go to Erasmus, who knows, maybe. Yeah, so it's about taking risks and working and backing up your risks. So I'm very excited to see what is going to come next, and I'm really hopeful that this will be very inspiring for you, and you will be working to create your own opportunities. And also, the Creative Insider will help you to get clarity and information, and and find your own path. And I want to finish this podcast, which has been a little bit different, and it's crazy that I managed to talk alone for almost an hour. But we're reaching this milestone of the 100 episodes, where we're gonna do something different. It's not gonna be Björk Ingels that we're gonna have on the show. We will have him, I'm sure, at some point. And I'm not going to tell you what's going to be the 100th episode, but there are news around the podcast. We want to, it was never about being great, I don't know, be famous or be untouchable, unreachable to you. It was on the contrary. We want to have the famous people so that we can interview afterwards the not so famous people and give them a boost. And we want to create a community where people collaborate and we help each other to be more accomplished, more to monetize our craft. This is something very crucial, I think. Everyone needs to work towards in order to be very accomplished and to love their craft and their design and their work. So we are launching our Discord. So we're going to have our Discord channel where there will be several topics. There will be business of design. We're talking about jobs. There will be a networking side. There will be discussion panels about the podcast. There will be a discussion panel about NFTs. And in the future, we're planning to have our own NFTs, which you'll have extra opportunities to connect with us. So I'll be putting the link in the description of this podcast so that you can connect to the Discord, be numerous. And in the next weeks, you'll have exclusive content on the Discord. And in the future, we'll have more and more exclusive stuff for the Discord. So make sure you join Discord. We have exclusive stuff on Instagram. So follow us on Instagram. You'll find a link below too. We are on Twitter too, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. You'll find all the links in the description. You can follow me personally and Désirée personally on Instagram. You'll find all the links below. My Instagram is @leshtark, like the architecture, little word play of game of words. And but the most important is the Discord. It's something exclusive that we're announcing only in this episode. And last but not least, make sure to join our YouTube channel, where we need to reach 1,000 subscribers in order to be able to monetize the channel, and also to have 4,000 hours views. This is how YouTube works. So this is a thing that you can do for free, and it will be very of a very big help in order to help the podcast survive, because as I said, it's a lot of fun, but we are also focusing on learning ourselves how you can monetize your craft, and we're working on monetizing our podcast. And that's not the main goal, but it's part of, like, you need to make money in order to keep running operation. That's how it works. So if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to follow on there and to follow us on YouTube. And in YouTube, you will always have a little bit of extra content because we enhance the podcast. While, for example, we talk about projects and certain visual parts, we enhance them with video. And yeah, that's it for me this week. Comment below, what do you think about this podcast? Tell me if my story was somehow relatable for you, inspiring for you. If you want to know something specific about becoming architects or working in Germany, living in Germany, anything you can think about, I'll be happy. Contact me here in the comments below, or you can text me on Instagram or on Discord. Especially on Discord, you can join our newsletter, drop us an email. I'll be very curious to know what is your opinion, what are your questions. Also on Spotify, I'll put a question pool. You can actually question stuff directly on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube. And yeah, that's it, I think. Thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Creative Insider. Stay tuned for more. Click the subscribe button, ring the bell, whatever you need to do, and see you next week. Thank you, and bye-bye.